Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Hope you are well. Lovely day. So today's learning, and thank you for trying our new time, 9 a.m. We will get there. It's very, very difficult in the mornings, trying to balance everything. So that's why we're trying at 9 a.m. We'll see how it works out. Today's learning is dedicated in memory of Leah Bas Bible, Tzvi Bas Mordechai, Avram ben David Slavin, Shalom ben Yisrael Morris, Eliezer Shalom ben Avram Shmuel Beres, Baruch Fegel Bas Ruben Baruch, Shalom ben Eleli, Beina Bas Bible, from Shoshana Bas Yaakov Shmuel, Sarah Malka Bas Binyamin, Yirmiyahu Yechiel ben Achav, and Moshe Eliezer. And the Yortzites for today, Rachel Bas Nachum Karton, Mordechai ben Moshe Korb, Yisrael ben Yisachar HaKohen Kazimir. Wish each and every one of their respective families long life and only simchas. So we are starting today, I think it's the third of our midot, our character traits. The one which we are discussing today is the idea of shame. Okay, shame. So what is shame? Is it a good thing or is it a bad thing? Okay, very easy to say to a child when they do something wrong, something which is unbefitting them or the values that you brought them up, you should be ashamed of yourself. What exactly do we want our child to do when we say that, right? What does it mean to be ashamed? Is shame something good, or is shame something that's bad and could be dangerous? Let's have a look. So in fact, we find that the character trait of shame is one of three of the core characteristics of being Jewish. The others are, of course, kindness and hold on 1 minute. My mind has slipped. There is shame, there is kindness, and the other one will come back to me in a minute. Okay, so I think it's compassion. Kindness, compassion, yeah, I think it's kindness, shame. The other one will come to me in a minute. Okay, so therefore, if this is one of the core values, we have to understand what is the purpose of shame, right? Clearly, we don't want people to walk around feeling guilty, right? Just constantly in a state of angst. That doesn't help. In fact, it can lead to a person being in a state of paralysis. So the question really is what is the point of shame? And in fact, we find it when it is first mentioned is in regards to Adam and Eve, right? Initially, they were naked, and there was no naked. The words in the Torah, the physical terms in the Torah, don't just mean, in their physicality. Everything is to be understood on a metaphysical, spiritual dimension, and therefore, when they says the Torah, they initially before they sinned, there was no, they weren't ashamed of the way they were, and after they sinned, then they were ashamed, right? It doesn't mean about the way they looked at each other because they saw each other before. It was the fact that there was something wrong the way they behaved, and that caused shame, right? And that shame in turn caused a process, right? And in fact, we find that with Cain and Abel, that Cain, after he killed his brother, what was his response? He was brazen. He said, Hashem achi anochi, am I my brother's keeper? What are you asking me for? There was no shame initially. Okay, so shame is something which is fundamental. Let's have a look inside, okay, and see what he says. It's an absolutely fascinating concept. So so he says, for about Adam and Eve, it is written, they were both naked, and the man and his wife, and they were not ashamed. They did not know the way of modesty, nor have the ability to discriminate between good and evil until they ate from the tree of knowledge, right? Therefore, he says, all living creatures, with the exception of man, do not have shame, not having wisdom, right? So having wisdom and shame go together. So if a person has wisdom, then they have shame. If they don't have wisdom, right, then they're not going to have shame. Because shame is the key instrument for bringing about change, okay? The trait of shame, I'm skipping a bit, and I'm going to go on and just take for you the highlights. The trait of shame is a great fence and an iron barrier against all of the transgressions. Since man commits many transgressions in private, that he will be ashamed to do so in public, right? Sorry, good morning, everyone. I haven't said good morning to everyone. I got so carried away. Good morning and the new time to Michelle, Peter, Eitan, Estelle, Rachel, Michael, Estelle again, Rachel and Estelle again. Okay, so the trait of shame is a great fence and an iron barrier against all transgressions. That should be obvious to all of you, okay? It should be obvious that shame is going to be the belts and braces to stop us, hopefully, from doing things that otherwise we shouldn't be doing, right? Since man commits many transgressions in private that he would be ashamed to commit in public. At least that used to be the way it was, right? I think to a degree it's like that, but it's not to the same degree. You watch videos and what people put in the public domain and on the social media domain. I don't think there is the same level of shame as there once was, right? But nonetheless, there still is some modicum of shame, especially in our circles, that we would sooner, we are more hesitant, we are more apprehensive about doing things in public than in private. And therefore, that is a barrier, right? We draw, the way we behave in public, we always want to make sure that we've got the correct visage and that we put our best foot forward and that we give the right impression. We wouldn't want people to think, that we brazenly are doing the wrong thing. Okay. So what goes behind closed doors is one thing, in public is something else. When Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, one of the great sages of the Talmudic period, was on his deathbed, his students said to him, "Our teacher blessed us." So what was the blessing that Rabbi Yochanan gave his students? "May it be God's will that the fear of heaven be upon you as the fear of flesh and blood." Okay, so that the fear of heaven should be upon you like the way that you fear other human beings. So they questioned to him, "Only so much? Is that all? The fear of heaven should only be as much as we fear other human beings and no more?" He answered, "Would that it be so?" Right? If only it was like that, right? The proof is that when a man commits a transgression, he says, "Would that no man saw me," right? All this is because one is afraid of being brought to shame, right? We don't want to be caught out, right? We're quite, we don't want anybody to see what we are doing, what we do behind closed doors, right? If we get angry, we don't want it to be in public, right? What goes on at home, that's up to me. That's none of your business. And therefore, when we have people around us, that is a lower level, right? In that it protects us from behaving inappropriately. Now, obviously, we're going to come to the higher level of shame, which is that we shouldn't just be ashamed of or embarrassed in front of other people, so to ensure that we behave correctly, but it should be that we behave. We recognize, we're cognizant that God is around us, right? Every action and every reaction of ourselves is going to be weighed up and measured. The cosmic camera is running 24/7, and therefore everything that we do counts, right? That's the beauty of Rosh Hashanah. That's why it's so exhilarating. On the one hand, everything that you do counts. Nobody needs to see it. Nobody needs to know about it. That's what we spoke about with pride. It's enough that you and your maker know what you did. You did the right thing. It didn't get recognition. The other person didn't say thank you. Doesn't matter. Forget it. However, the flip side is that as much as you know that you've got that recognition, right? Nonetheless, you still having that recognition, it means that you don't. In other words, you're just with you and your maker. It's enough that God knows what you did, right? So that is the ultimate level. So again, sorry, I'm a bit tired. There were two levels, right? The basic level of shame is that between you and your fellow human being, that should be your belts and braces. I don't want to do the wrong thing. I know everyone's watching me. So that protects us to a degree, right, from doing the wrong thing. There are less crimes in the public domain, in the public gaze, than there are in private. However, the higher level that we should be aspiring to is to be aware that everything I do, like we said in Rosh Hashanah, it counts for good and for bad. And therefore, when it comes to, even when I'm on my own, I'm still I'm not a debased human. I'm not an animal. I have to behave. I'm made in the image of God. I'm right. Ultimately, right. Everything that we do every second, we're going to have to account for. So therefore, even in private, right, we should be aware that of the concept of shame, in that the level of the concept of shame protects us even when we are with nobody else. The way we behave in our homes, the way we behave behind closed doors, knowing that God is always there and he's always watching us and always wants the best for us and doesn't want us to do something which is beneath us. Okay, so there are 4 levels of shame. Let's move on. If one is ashamed to transgress in public but does so in private, it is if he says he steals the mind of the Almighty, being ashamed before men and not before the blessed one, and his evil is extremely great. Okay, so that's the lowest. I guess that's the lowest level. The next level: if one is ashamed before men and refrains from transgressions even in private, fearing they will become known to men. It's not that anybody sees, right? But you're afraid that doing it in private, it may get out, right? About such a person, our sages have said that virtuous conduct, even not for the sake of heaven, will result in virtuous conduct for the sake of heaven. That's one level up. Even when you're not physically being watched, you are aware that what I do in private could get out, right? And that protects you from doing the wrong thing. The third level is if one thinks, how can I do this evil even in private? Being more ashamed before the servant than before the master, and stealing the mind of the Almighty. If one is therefore deterred from transgressions, this is a worthy state. So why are you not doing this? Sarah, Brian, why are we not doing this? The reason is because you have an awareness and a fear and a shame of the Almighty, right? It's not because I'm worried about what other people are going to say or what's going to go in the JC or the newspapers. I'm worried about what the Almighty. How can I let him down? Right? He made me, right? However, there is a 4th level. If one is ashamed both in public and in private before the blessed one alone, being ashamed before him as he is before his neighbor, there is no higher state than this. Okay, so what's the highest level? Is that there is no difference between public and private. You are just as ashamed before him, right, as you would be before your neighbor. It's palpable. There's a cognizant awareness that I'm living with God, and therefore, if I'm living with God, how could I do something so offensive to him, so beneath me, right? So shame is. So if I'll ask you the question, Rebecca, Estelle, is it something good or is it something bad? Right? Is shame? We said every character trait has a flip side. So is this something good or bad? Right? And the answer is that shame is something which has tremendous benefit in our lives, in that we need that awareness, as we saw with Adam and Eve, and then the lack of it by Cain. If we have an awareness, if we are able to feel a shame, then we are going to go through the stages of regret, and therefore we're going to make the necessary amends in our lives, right, so that we can move on. It's not to stay, and this is answering Sarah's question, I believe. Okay, it is yes, it is part of us. It is considered an inherent virtue that we have. Okay, it's not something that, of course, we can develop it, but it's something that Jews are considered to have. And in fact, if you don't have it, then this question is whether we stood at Sinai. So says the good book that we just quoted. Anyways, we're running late, and there is another meeting waiting in the wings. So let me just make the following point. So shame is something which is a vehicle. It is meant to ensure, on the one hand, that we don't do the wrong thing, and having done the wrong thing, we feel terrible about it. We feel regret, right? We have that contrition, and then we go about the necessary steps of rehabilitating ourselves, reforming our character, so that we can move on in our lives. So shame is good in that sense. When is shame bad? Shame is bad when we only stick and stay and wallow in self-pity, if shame is something that is something that is weighing us down, it leads to mental health issues, it can lead to depression, anxiety, and it can lead to us being in a state of paralysis. So shame is that vehicle. We take it on. I look at myself in the mirror. Oh, I can't believe I did that. I feel bad about it. I'm better than that. Now I'm going to make necessary amends. I'm not going to repeat those mistakes again. Okay, that's the lesson for today. A really important idea of shame. We'll carry on, please God, tomorrow, 9 a.m. Thank you for your comments. Really, really helpful. Now we're going to carry on with Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He causes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even when I walk in the valley of darkness, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You set a table before me in the presence of my adversaries. You anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. May only goodness and kindness pursue me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord for the length of days. Memorial prayer. Adon Elamim Zacho Es Nishmais Le'abas Bible Siva Bas Mordechai Avram Ben David Slavin Shalom Ben Yisrael Morris Eliezer Shalom Ben Avashmo Ben Ezekiel Fegel Bas Ben Baruch Shalom Ben Eli Ben Bas Ben Bible Yirmiyahu Yechia Ben Chav Moshe Eliezer V'Rem Moshe Shalom Bas Yaakov Shmo Sarah Malka Bas Ben Yomin Rachel Bas Nachum Carton Mordechai Ben Moshe Kov Yisrael Ben Yisachar Cohen Kazmeh Shalchu Lilamam Began Eden Teimenu Chosam Lachem Balarachamim Yasrim B'Seitzer Kanapav Leolamim Yetzor B'Sachem Seshosam Adonai Nachlasam Yanuchu B'Shlom Shkavam V'Nomar Amen. Lastly, Refuah Shlema prayer. Looking forward to seeing you. I'm interviewing later this morning the Minister of Immigration, a true honor in the Israeli Minister of Immigration, an amazing Ethiopian lady who you'll be able to watch tomorrow night. Providing we press the record button. In the meantime, we're still in splendid isolation after 5 days. Yes, we haven't got results for 5 days, so I'm going to be calling them up after this and giving them a piece of my mind, since they probably lost the COVID test. Anyways, now for the Refuah Shlema prayer for all those that have COVID and everything else. ישלח רעים רפואה שלמה לשמיים לכל אביהם בצורך שחל יסור רפואה הנפש רפואה הגוף השב הגזמן קריב ונאמר amen. Wishing everyone well, keep safe, keep well. We'll see you tomorrow. All the very best. 9 a.m. tomorrow. Don't be late. All the best.